Thank you for joining me today on this studio visit. I want to thank KODA for the opportunity to share my work with you today as part of my residency with KODA that took place from September to December, and I guess a bit of January. This is a great opportunity for me to talk both about the project I did during my residency with KODA, but I would also like to give a bit of background on other projects that led me to this work that we recently exhibited at 5 Miles as part of the residency. So I just want to say, as a preface to the different works that I'm going to share with you, is that I guess my work or my practice is firmly entrenched in research-based practices, but also it is really tethered at its center to a real focus on process, on collaboration, and on materiality. So the first project I'm going to talk about is Semaphore Island, which was a mixed media installation using found sound and early sound recording techniques. This project uses at its point of departure field recordings of now extinct birds, such as the Kwai-a-o and the Mariana crow. These recordings are, in retrospect, a kind of sonic embalming of wildlife that has gone extinct. So the project started when two different lines of inquiry kind of merged in my mind as I was, reading a lot about early sound recording techniques and getting very interested in that history. But at the same time, also getting more and more informed about mass extinction and climate change, which I was getting very anxious about it, but I was still very much in a naive phase of understanding, when, how, timelines, and still thinking about it as something that's like, far in the future, even though it was happening then, just, not so close to my life in New York. The story of extinction, especially as it relates to bird species, I thought could be told and intertwined with the nascent technological advances in audio field recordings. As you can imagine, when recordings were first, when audio recording was first invented, it was cumbersome with very big and immovable equipment. But as advances were made, suddenly you could take this equipment outside and record natural sounds with it. And that was a real revolution for film, for science, for audio recording, and how it expressed itself in entertainment and in science and in basically curatorial practices of recorded sound. So I started to look into species that were still in existence when recording equipment became light enough, and we're able to create these vivid documents of wildlife that before was not possible. And primarily worked with recordings from the 30s, the 1930s to the 1980s. These recordings themselves go through different technologies, from a really interesting way to capture sound with light on film, to 8-track, and then lighter handheld tape recorders. When I started to think about all these different strands of research and how are they going to come together as a tangible artwork, I bumped into the phonograph, which was the first device invented in 1957 that recorded sound and was quickly relegated to the margins of history with the invention of the phonograph, only a couple of decades earlier. The phonograph. The phonograph, basically what it did was it recorded sound and translated it into an image. This immediately kind of resonated with me because of the way that I'm so interested in how you can translate certain things from one medium to another, and what happens during that act of translation, move from one modality to another, and think of them also as things that kind of, move in a continuum and are not, there's not like a clear separation or a boundary or a border. This is an illustration of a phonautograph, and you see that here there is, there's like a feather, but the ones, the one that I used was actually using a boar bristle. So it's this pre-analog process that uses like a drum, a crank, and a boar bristle to capture sound waves as they move through the air. The main reason, as I mentioned, for the extinction of the phonautograph, so to speak, was that recorded sound a little bit later, was able to offer playback capabilities. So we were able to play the music or sound that we recorded to ourselves. And this device was quickly forgotten. I would say that trying to find a phonautograph that worked or was even in one piece was not easy. There are different parts of the machine in various collections and museums, but there was only one place that I found that had a whole working machine, and that was the Edison Museum. And the collector there it's a private collection, was so helpful and wonderful with helping and collaborating in this and helping, me generate those images. This is an example that I just couldn't help myself but put in this presentation of two different, I guess, artifacts from around the same time. The first one is the ear phonautograph. So this is a phonautograph, but instead of a cone to collect information, to collect the sounds, you have an actual human ear connected to this mechanism, and it was toured all over Europe so people could see it. And next to it, there's an example of an ectoplasm photograph. So this really interesting connection between, or a resonance that I, immediately saw when researching the phonautograph between these early sound recording practices and early photographic practices, and this great desire to record, to try to record and capture that which is not visible or touch, things that we can touch or see or hold, to try to use these like new technologies and new methods to somehow grasp them and have a hold of them for like a moment longer. So I would really love to share with you the making of a print for Semaphore Island, because I think the process of it is, really enriches the experience of the project. So Claudia, if you can play the video, the first video.
So when you are ready, you put it on and I start.
Okay, hold on, let me just. Perfect.
Look at that. Look at that. But the beginning is very.
That's amazing.
That's excellent. Had such recording. Never.
The voices of the wild.
Wow. Incroyable. And if you look, they are all the same, huh? Wow.
Excellent.
Ah, poof. You have some more like that? If it is all like that.
So you can't hear? It's really moving.
Mm-hmm. But if you are here, you just say straight line.
True.
Good.
First one.
Very nice.
And the second one. Somewhere. Look at that.
It's great.
If the museums saw me doing that, they would kill me. Here we are. And if you look at the process of the alcohol, it's instantaneous. As soon as you put it inside, it's fixed. Look at that. See that?
As you can see, this is, a pre-analog device that uses a crank and a boar's bristle to basically capture the vibrations of sound on a piece of paper covered in soot, and then you fix it with alcohol. So it's this very tactile process that takes sound and moves it through all these different materials and structures, which I, found very a very interesting process. I just want to share now a video of documentation of the installation itself. So the installation is a 4-channel sound piece that was created in collaboration with Ryan Brown, and it exists in the space with these prints that are were exhibited on these artists designed the shelves that I designed for that space. So Claudia, if you can play the second video, we can take a quick look at what the piece looked and sounded like. And the original piece is about 10 minutes long. The show was actually in two spaces that were that had like identical dimensions, but do kind of like mirrors of each other. But you'll see still images and hear excerpts from the sound in this little video. Okay, so the next piece I'm going to share with you was a sound installation in 2018, 6-channel sound at City Hall Park that was commissioned by More Art, which is a public art organization that does a lot of other socially engaged work and all kinds of programming here in the city. This is my second project with them, and it's a piece that I made through a series of experimental sound and breathing workshops, and it's composed entirely out of breath sounds. I would say that the piece seeks to highlight the uses and abuses of air and the shared sphere of air as our rightful commons, something, you know, is we use and are in every day, but is under serious duress from all kinds of directions and interests. Something that we don't really think about in our day-to-day lives necessarily, but I really thought it is worth, you know, spending some time with and kind of thinking about our different experiences with breathing, but also with its counterpart, breathlessness. By employing the actual sounds of breathing, the piece was also a kind of portrait of the city using its least tangible and visible aspects of its residents. In the experimental workshops, we had participants from you know, New Yorkers that came from all kinds of all kinds of places to us for these workshops, and they were very experimental, very process oriented, and really tried to weave together different disciplines from you know, recording techniques to my co-presenter for the workshop, and a really important collaborator in this was Jessica Wolf, who's a master teacher in Alexander technique. So she designed and also facilitated the breathing exercises to the experiences that each, you know, breather and participant brought to the workshop. And we also incorporated all kinds of you know, ways of thinking and theories about breathing and breathlessness. This work actually has, while it is very much entrenched in thinking about, you know, environmental themes and our lived experience as you know, as breathers in the city, it also has a very personal source. It was inspired by Sophie and has written extensively on the phenomenology of illness. And she has woven into her research in a very moving and thought-provoking way her personal experience as a person living with a rare and incurable lung disease. You know, seeing her navigate this you know, illness and disability in her personal life, reading her writing and books that were dedicated to this you know, this topic and this experience through a theoretical framework, were very influential for me, and are definitely one of the main entry points for me to this whole project. The final installation of Out of Thin Air meshes sounds and sight into a multi-layered experience. So there's the installation itself, but obviously it changes throughout the day depending on what the sound biome that the city offers throughout the day. So in the morning, it's more quiet, it gets very dense during certain parts of the day, depending if construction is going on, traffic, people visiting the park, spending time at the park, and you know, doing recreation in the park. And so it was very interesting to visit the piece in different times and see how the piece itself changes depending on what time you're coming and to experience it, and what day you're coming to experience it. The piece was composed of 3 vignettes. It's 17 minutes, so it's you know, the video that we're going to show in a second has a few smaller, you know, really small snippets of that, and also there's some images of you know, both visitors experiencing the piece, but also of sense tuning tours that we offered during the exhibition of Out of Thin Air. And in these particular pictures, I think you see Zoe Hart and Jeff Casper leading visitors in this sense tuning tour throughout the park. And so you're experiencing the park and the piece blindfolded and really kind of enhancing and foregrounding your listening experience. In general, I really wanted, aside from, the themes and that are explored in the piece and the methods and the collaborative efforts that are kind of happening through it, is also to just really think about this difference between listening and hearing, and how to think about our sonic environment, as mundane as it seems sometimes, in a new and fresh way, and tap into it from a slightly different angle. So Claudia, if you can play the third video. The next piece, or project that I'm going to lead you through, or attempt to lead you through, is The Shape of Play. The Shape of Play was my most recent and also biggest public art project. And it was commissioned by the Jewish Arts Alliance and curated by Now and There for the city of Boston. This is a piece that we started working on before the pandemic, with a very, clear idea in mind of how we're going to bring it to fruition. And then the pandemic hit and, kind of blew our whole plan to bits and pieces. But we did manage to put it out there a few months later than expected. And we were all kind of amazed that it came together. And I think it came together at a time when public art was, really kind of accrued new meaning for us as, both as individuals and as communities. It was, the one place where we could be together in a safe way and experience art. And as museums were closed and so many other public spaces. So it was a real, it was a real like different experience for me, because it was something that had to pivot and change so many times as we were developing it and producing it. And we were all so thrilled when we were able to open it in at the end in 2020. So this piece is basically starts with thinking about playgrounds, and approaches playgrounds as sites full of resonance and sound. It also ventures into the vital role that play has in community and creativity, and comes from, a large extent from my experience as a parent to young kids, and sitting for many, many hours, especially through, the earlier years of their life in playgrounds, and just, witnessing these environments, and what happens in them over time, and just realizing these are places that are actually super interesting and super rich in terms of both, like, the way they look visually, the way they are integrated into the city, the way they're overlooked by most people that are not parents or caregivers, and the way they sound. So, kind of thinking of them as like these sites for sound creation and exchanges of sounds, and thinking about playgrounds as these actual, like, giant instruments that you could think about as like a way to generate like a real rich variety of sounds. So what I did in terms of process, I recorded playgrounds all over Boston. This is after a really extensive research period where we actually walked, through a lot of Boston with Leah Triplett Harrington, which was the curator for this project, and really kind of, got to know the city better through our feet, and moving from neighborhood to neighborhood, and kind of getting a feel for these different playgrounds throughout the city. After recording the playground structure itself, I created a multi-channel soundscape. So it was, again, a 6-channel soundscape, which was exhibited within a composition of color and form. So you see here these wood structures that kind of play with this idea of like, abstraction, rhythm, repetition, and difference, all things that you find in playgrounds, all things that you find in also, modernist traditions, and kind of going back to like this very interesting connection, not as well known as it should be, between theories of kindergarten and theories of play, and theories of modernism, as these were very influential theories at the time, the theories of Froebel, about thinking about, play and like learning through play, and how inherent creativity is, play is to creativity, to the point where the Bauhaus actually had a kindergarten teacher teaching a course, and a lot of artists from Frank Lloyd Wright to other artists and architects were very influenced by these theories of play and theories of kindergarten that were very prevalent at the end of the 19th century and early 20th century. So these were all things that were, swirling in my head as I was working on this piece, together with, again, doing this getting really familiar with these spaces that can seem so generic and so uninteresting to us when we're, just kind of wandering through a city. So with the multi-channel soundscape and the visual composition, I was able to delve into these kind of experimental practices and situate the project somewhere between the visual, the spatial, and the auditory in this open-ended continuum, and having it kind of move around between these different facets of its process, and also thinking about how sound touches us all in this very kind of foundational way, and how it helps us connect. The shape of play thinks of playgrounds as like large resonant compositions that we can all play, enter and play with. And so for this work, I used my hands, my feet, sticks and sand and stones to create a library of sounds as I visited the different playgrounds, and we recorded them. And then in the studio, I created the sound composition, or the soundscape, which later was spatialized to move between these different sculptural structures. The sculptures were anchored in sand-filled vases. reminiscent of sandboxes. The sand, thinking of sand, which is a material that lends itself to sharing, so playing with it together, but also to this build, smash, and build again ethos. So you're always experimenting, and there's nothing settled about playing with sand. I love that about it, that it's open-ended, and it's meant to be only temporary when you play with sand. And so I wanted to have that at the basis of this whole thing, and this idea of communal play. Furthermore, and this is kind of serendipitous and kind of fell in place really beautifully, is that the neighborhood where the Shape of Play was exhibited is the North End in Boston. And it was the first neighborhood where the first playground in the United States was created in the 19th century. This was a sand garden that was open to the children of the neighborhood by a group of women who wanted to, offer the neighborhood kids who had nowhere to play this public space to, again, be in community, play, experiment, and, be kids. And so that kind of, was something that came together in a way that wasn't really planned, but I thought resonated beautifully with the project. And this is, again, a small snippet of three different segments from the piece. The piece itself is 17 minutes long, and it has 3 main sections. There's a few more images of the Shape of Play. This leads us to the residency with KODA, and the project that I focused on during my residency, which is called City of Trees. The first couple of months of the residency, we had a studio on Governor's Island, and I just wanted in this studio visit to give you a bit of a taste of what it was like, because it's a pretty special experience. Here you can see the glorious environment that our studios are nestled in. There is a big working farm in Governor's Island, and lots of things growing, lots of amazing people stewarding the land and taking care of chickens and plants and soil, and the amount of knowledge that also is, you can feel that's palpable there in that urban farm. Was amazing and very exciting to me. This is the kind of stuff that I'm really interested in, and was really nice to work in proximity to that. Our studios were at Swale House, and before I talk about the studios, this is just like a little glimpse at where I did my all my office work, which is outside. And I got to, they have really beautiful trees in Governor's Island that are very big and old. And it's kind of almost incongruous, the amount of, buzzing and thriving nature there's there when you're also surrounded in the water, but also surrounded by this really dense built environment of Lower Manhattan. So it was pretty special. And when we were residents in Swale House, we also, one of the kind of the wonderful and unexpected aspects of it is that I got to spend time and meet a lot of other artists and curators that are, really immersed in thinking and thinking about, nature and nature in the built environment. So, a lot of folks that I had a lot in common with, and it was, a very nice environment to exchange ideas and just kind of learn about how these other artists are thinking and working. So it was like this real concentration over there at Swale House and also other adjacent houses. This are some images for my studio. You can see, the house definitely has a lot of character. It's not like you're like regular, studio space, like all, clean and utilitarian. This is more kind of like an old house. We had, beautiful light streaming through the windows. And there's Amanda McDonald, who is the curator that runs Swale House and was just coming back with a bounty of wildflowers that were growing in and around their edible plants garden that Swale House also grows and manages in the urban farm area, which I visited a lot of times during my my stay on the island. So the project that I worked on during the residency developed it from, doing a lot of research and kind of connecting with different organizations and people who are busy with trees, thinking about trees, taking care of trees. It is called City of Trees. Was my focus during the residency, and my idea was to have this project that was very much an art project, but also leaves the exhibition space and goes out into the street and connects with the trees of New York. So New York City is a home to over 8 million people. We're a big city. But also it is home to an expansive urban forest of around 5.2 million trees. These trees are, crucial to our life in the city. They're not just, there because cities have trees. They help us breathe more easily. They keep us cool when the weather is hot, and they protect our streets and homes from the rising waters of big storms more and more as, climate is warming and changing. So City of Trees, when I started thinking about it, was really focused on the reciprocal relationship between New Yorkers and the leafy community of trees we share our city with. And I really wanted to focus on this act of reciprocity through the project and bring that to the foreground. So City of Trees, here you can see some prints from City of Trees, and they are cyanotypes, and the project is inspired by 19th century artist scientist Anna Atkins at a time when art and science were very much intertwined. We can also see that with the phonautograph, that that connectedness that was very much you can't really tease it apart, I think, especially in the 19th century. And Atkins' work, really sits there at this very interesting scene between art and science. When you look at her prints, and for this project, I really wanted to have a conversation with an Anna Atkins print. It wasn't that easy. They are in some collections, but they're not available to look at. And her prints, images are all over the internet, but I really wanted to see a print, like see the materiality, see it as an object, like see the thing, and not just, you know, JPEGs of it in different contexts, especially because, you know, Victorian art is kind of moves around also in all kinds of other spheres. So I eventually did find one in the exhibition at the New York Public Library, and it was really wonderful to encounter one up close and to really see the paper and how the print, you know, the print sits on the paper. And the work very much is inspired by her, you know, her practice and the way that she navigated like art, photography, and science. So my inquiry, you know, developed into a kind of double register. The first one was really focused on this map that I encountered during my you know, research and learning about city trees. And this is a map that was created online by the New York City Parks Department. It's a tree map. It really focuses on the trees of the city and has a lot of information on them. And it is a living, breathing map of the urban forest, which means it is interactive and it is constantly changing. It records acts of stewardship and care that residents give to, you know, trees on their block. If it's a citizen pruner or someone that, you know, cleaned a tree bed, it kind of changes as trees are dying and trees are being planted. And within those images, so these are cyanotypes of sections of the map. And within those images of the map, also there's nestled another photographic inquiry, which is based on walking the urban forest and collecting different leaves and green matter and detritus throughout my kind of explorations and learning about the urban forest, learning from, you know, reading and talking, and learning from walking and just being, you know, outside in this urban forest. During the making of the City of Trees, the city became my studio. Really, I feel like I made this piece outdoors. From, as I said, extensive research into tree species and tree stewardship, and collecting leaves and tree specimens, spending also a bunch of time at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, getting a lot of great information from some, you know, really helpful folks over there, and just learning more about, you know, their collection and how, you know, how they take care of their trees and think about it, you know, their like living museum. And so from that part of like researching and learning to actually printing these images, which happened all outside. So cyanotypes are prints that are made outside in the sun, not in a dark room. And so all these prints were printed on Flushing Avenue. And you know, among people like walking back and forth, jogging, parents with strollers, buses, people walking their dogs. I was there, you know, for a good couple of months, just printing all these cyanotypes for City of Trees. I was working with the sun, so, you know, the way I was. My work process was completely reliant on the weather and on the passage of, you know, clouds, the time of day, the changing of the seasons. I started in the fall and printed into winter. So, you know, that really kind of changed, and I really learned how to gauge in a, you know, in a useful but far from accurate way, but very, you know, useful and pragmatic way. How do I take all these different elements into account and work with them to generate these images, to kind of create these images. So like The Shape of Play, I think, you know, City of Trees urges us to look around us and reconnect with our city's rich universe. One more thing, as I mentioned before, you know, that was really important for me, that the piece starts in the exhibition space, but also they will, you know, break out from it and go outside. And so to focus on that or make that happen, we created a public engagement program that was running throughout the residency, and its HQ was 5 miles, which was so amazing at, accommodating and collaborating with us on this aspect of the work. And so this is actually an image of the installation in 5 miles. And the first thing that we did was a tree care and art making workshop, which used 5 miles as an HQ. And this tree care workshop was done in collaboration with Trees New York, which is an amazing organization that focuses on tree care and stewardship and education, and does like really important work in the city. So this was an opportunity to take this project as a prism, and think of it as a kind of prism through which to explore and address and think about all kinds of urgent political and social justice issues, as well as give participants real hands-on experience with caring for our city trees. So our first program was our tree care and art making workshop in collaboration with Trees New York, which used 5 Miles Gallery as its HQ. And we got together and on a Sunday morning and took care of, gave care and took care of the trees on the block, creating the soil and plants from the spring, and just learning about what do these trees need, how can we help them thrive as a result of that. And so if our tree is thriving, its canopy is bigger, the critters that live on that tree can thrive more. The people that are living on that block and passing by those trees are benefiting from cleaner air, and more shade. And so kind of this idea of like affecting the actual conditions with our actions, which is something through simply taking care of like the tree, right there outside on the block. Here we are digging and cleaning and caring and taking care of trees on the block. And then we, there's a lot of enthusiasm moving on to the block beyond. The second part of the workshop was taking these materials of care and turning them into materials of creativity. And so we had we took the mud, we took the soil, we took the water, we took some, seeds and just kind of natural materials that I collected, and sat down and just experimented with, what can we do with them? And after experiences those materials and engaging with them as materials of care, coming to them as materials from which we can make things, brought the whole experience in through like a very different angle and with a different kinds of background to it. Our participants are trying out all kinds of things. Another public engagement event that we did as part of the residency also took place at 5 Miles Gallery. It was a climate chat in collaboration with 350 Brooklyn, which is a climate activism organization that I am a member of. And we basically put together a workshop that its goal was to approach activism in a very open and friendly and unintimidating way and positive way to participants who are not necessarily from the activist community, and introduce them through their own personal experience of or connection with urban nature and other kinds of nature to specific campaigns that they can get immersed in, get involved in. This, the way the event was structured, I think really allowed the participants to make that connection between their personal experience, their love and passion for nature, as well as their worries and anxieties, and make that connection with simple actions that they can take, even very locally, which could really make a difference, make them feel like they're part of a community, give them a sense of agency, promote a sense of well-being. And so kind of anchoring activism in these kinds of experiences and these kinds of goals that are, more personal, more local, and very tangible and doable. So this, we also specifically also connected with certain ideas that are and campaigns that are related to the urban canopy and tree equity, as well as other campaigns that had to do with like pipelines, fracked gas pipelines, and shorelines in the city, and a bunch of other stuff. And these are basically what we did during our time together. And now I'm working on with, City of Trees has started its journey, so to speak, with the KODA residency, but I am continuing to work on it and expanding it and thinking of ways through sound practices to also weave in the aspects of the project. So aspects that have to do again with knowledge building, but also narratives and storytelling, and to create a project that's multifaceted also in its medium, as well as this weaving of artwork and activism in this particular way. And so the project is still growing and changing and adding, gathering layers, and still playing around with a lot of different ways to materialize and embody all this knowledge that I've accrued over these last working on this project, and the experiences, and this is where we'll see where it heads, where it is heading to. Thank you very much for spending time with us and this work. And thank you again, KODA, for hosting the studio visit.